where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. You agree with that, Daryl?
Absolutely.
You better, by God. Yes, sir. That's the way we start the show. I've been starting the show that way for, well, it'll be 6 years pretty soon, and I ain't going to change. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, I've spent a lot of time talking about the jurisprudence underlying Justice Scalia's decision in the first Second Amendment decision that came along in the modern era called District of Columbia versus Heller. And I thought it was really poorly decided. But it's one of those where I don't like the way the decision came about, but I really like the results. Okay, so we start out today with Zemi Cotney, and then we go into the card. Obviously, today, our one daily newspaper doesn't have an editorial. They haven't had an editorial for about a year now. Our other daily newspaper doesn't even have a newspaper. Starting April Fool's Day of last year, they stopped printing a newspaper, and now they're strictly online. Since they don't print a hard copy newspaper and distribute it every 2 weeks, they are no longer a newspaper of general circulation. They're just some more stuff on the internet. But they publish an editorial maybe once every 10 days. They're pretty far behind in the score. Let's see, the latest score. Candid had 12 and the Daily News had 7. So they can't even keep up with Candid. Going into Jimmy Cotney, so when I don't have a local editorial, I go look out online and find out if any national publication or other substitute might have an editorial. And today it came from the New Yorker. The Atlantic. And it's an article in here called The Attempt on Donald Trump's Life and an Image That Will Last. Now, of course, you have to be living under a rock. It's a guy named Benjamin Wallace who wrote this on July 13. You'd have to be living under a rock to not know that somebody took a shot at Donald Trump. The bullet hit him in the ear during a rally that was going on in Butler, Pennsylvania. And everybody has pretty much zeroed in on the most obvious and blatant parts of the attempted assassination. Who got shot, who shot him, where he was. And it wasn't what the Secret Service did, Daryl. It's apparently what the Secret Service didn't do. The shooter was apparently spotted on a rooftop within 125 yards of Donald Trump, and the Secret Service was alerted and didn't do anything about it. They did they did kill the shooter shortly after he killed Donald Trump. After he shot Donald Trump. But in the meantime, another shooter, another victim had been killed. So I want to cover this, but I don't want to cover the same old thing that's literally been covered 100 more than 100 times by everybody and his brother. So here's a little different perspective coming from the Atlantic. The attempt on Donald Trump's life and an image that will last. And it starts out with a quote, "By an American flag is an already indelible portrait of our era of political crisis and conflict." Almost immediately after shots rang out at Donald Trump's rally in Butler, the former president flinched on stage, grabbed at his face, and dropped to the ground. In the chaotic moments that followed, Trump was helped to his feet by Secret Service agents and delivered definitive proof of life. He raised his right fist skyward and mouthed the word, "Fight." A news photo that circulated shortly after, taken by Evan Vucci of the Associated Press, Trump is set against a clear blue sky and 4 Secret Service agents clutch at him, one of whom stares directly at the camera. He's shielded by a pair of black sunglasses. An American flag appears to almost float over the scenes. Trump's lips are pursed, his eyes narrowed, and his chin slightly raised. There are streaks of blood atop his right ear and on his cheek. There are streaks of where he's looking out far beyond what the camera can take in, at the public, at the future, and he is defiant. Whoever tried to kill him failed. It's already an indelible image of our era of political crisis and conflict. Other images, screenshots, and fragments of information rushed onto social media and filled out the story. In one, a Secret Service agent kneeling on the grass turns his body and extends a finger, presumably to identify the shooter, who had reportedly taken up a position on a rooftop outside the rally, and another taken just after Trump fell to the stage. The former president's head is framed a few inches off the ground with blood dribbling down his cheeks. And in the third, taken seconds after Trump rose to his feet, he's held up by Secret Service agents who have surrounded him. One has both hands over Trump's head to protect him, but it looks almost as if someone is praying for him. Each of these photographs seizes the moment, draining it of the chaos that is apparent in the live streams. They also add a sense of foreboding. The figures in these images and anyone who views them are all waiting with trepidation for what comes next. The Trump campaign soon released a statement that said he's fine and being checked out at a local medical facility. Everyone should agree that that is good news. What happened is horrifying. That flag, hanging at an odd angle, almost upside down, offers a sense of the eeriness of this moment and of the general dread. Some of the elements in Vucci's image are familiar as the countless others of Trump. The red MAGA hat, the wisps of hair, the mouth turned down into a frown, the chin thrust forward. Ever since Trump became a politician, and before that, the most familiar images of him have been designed and disseminated by those who oppose him to emphasize his insolence and his threat, his aura of threat. Even those which his supporters might celebrate, such as the confident pose Trump struck for a mugshot last August after being indicted for conspiring to overturn the 2020 election results in Georgia, are often in settings that Trump himself would not have chosen and are thus not fully his own. Vucci's photograph is an emblem of this tumultuous age, when the long pattern of political violence in America has intensified. Some of the most recent targets include Republican congressional leader Steve Scalise and Michigan's Governor Gretchen Whitmer on January 6. Former Vice President Mike Pence, the former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and other government leaders all narrow escaped the baying crowds at, guess where? The riot at the Capitol? Wrong. The Capitol insurrection. That's one of the reasons I read this into the record. The Capitol insurrection. So the Atlantic, has to propagandize no matter what. The Capitol insurrection. A bunch of trespassers got into the Capitol. The farthest thing on their mind was anything like an insurrection. But insurrection carries a whole lot more punch than riot. Finishing up this article, what makes the image is Trump. In its surface details, it carries out echoes of the Marines at Iwo Jima. Anyone who's ever seen it will never forget the flag raising at Iwo Jima. The 5 Marines and the Navy corpsmen lifting up that American flag on the top of Mount Suribachi. When I can't remember who it was, but one famous figure, could have been a congressman, said, "This picture will guarantee that we'll have a Marine Corps for the next 1,000 years." On the stage, Trump seemed well aware of the image he was creating. It's an image that captures him as he would like to be seen, so perfectly, in fact, that it will outlast all the rest. So that's Jimmy Cotney for today. A little different take on what happened at Butler. I guess I ought to go back to 36-40, 34, and then I'll go back into the card. 36-34, we've got the Guam Visitors Bureau, who shows item number 7 on their agenda, old corporation business. You know what old corporation business they're going to discuss, Errol? Errol?
Probably not, if
I don't
it doesn't have anything under it.
I don't either, because they didn't tell us what it was. Voiding every action that they took at that meeting. I don't know what's so hard about this. And I'd kind of fault Doug Moylan, who's the legal advisor for the government of Guam, telling people he should be telling people, don't do this. You've got to have an agenda. Everything you're going to discuss, the agenda must put the public on notice of what is to be discussed, or the meeting is potentially void.
Something just came to mind, Bob.
Sir.
I think when there's a part of the law that says that when a new appointee to a board or to a directorship or deputy directorship, that they're required to go through an ethics class. And the ethics class includes the proper format of the open government law. So there's no excuse.
Well, that's 2 different subjects. First of all, not doing the agenda right is not an ethical violation. So they've kind of corrupted the whole ethics process. Ethics and the law are 2 related but different subjects. But it certainly wouldn't hurt, or at least have a footnote in there. Hey, by the way, when you see an agenda that has an item like new business and no items, stop the meeting. Maybe not stopping the meeting is the ethical violation, because they shouldn't proceed forward on an improperly noticed meeting. right?
That's right. They should catch it actually as soon as it's published, or before it's published, before it was sent out to be published.
Well, I don't know that the members have the ability to review the agenda before the meeting, but certainly when the meeting is called to order and they're looking at it, or they've had a chance to look at it online, an ethical member would say, I move that the meeting be adjourned and reconvene when a proper agenda is published. That would be a way of going about doing it. You wouldn't have to do that very many times. Okay, going back down to the card, this is what I have on the card for today. I've got systemic racism. I've got James Moylan versus reality. I've got Maneka versus Israel. I've got false flag versus Trump, malfunction versus the governor, Paul Palms versus Doug, and Dave Sablon versus Fisher, and whatever else we get to today. So starting out with systemic racism, can we pop up a picture of the pirate and me, if you would, Daryl? Yeah, and take that other frame out of there so it doesn't cover the big frame. I mean the small frame. Thank you. I'm still trying to work with Facebook here to see if I can get into Facebook today.
I've got it about where I can. I'm not real good at this.
Yeah, that's good enough. Oh, I wonder how that snuck in there. Can you bring it out, Daryl?
And we do have this other camera working. This one.
Good. Yeah, okay, so systemic racism goes back to Paul Zerzan's letter to the editor. Over a year ago, he said, hey, you guys, we call it red rice, but it's really not red rice. The color of that rice is orange. We ought to start calling it orange. A couple days later, the Daily News collected some really scathing comments, really criticizing Paul Zerzan, some xenophobic, ethnocentric comments. And after that, Paul Zerzan was canceled. They won't run his letters to the editor anymore because he disobeyed the narrative, apparently. I'm still maneuvering around here trying to get Facebook. By Jove, I think I have it. Yeah. Yes, I have it. So what I've done is I've done this. I've taken that little paradigm or that little anecdote. The narrative is that I don't care what your eyes are telling you. That rice is red. Don't come around here with your orange rice. Paul Zerzan is the conveyor of the truth. So we have this constant battle between the truth and the narrative. Let me show you a graphic example. Now you see number one, the word says orange, but the letters are red. Number two, the word says red, but the letters are orange. classic example of systemic racism. And when I find this dichotomy between the narrative and the truth, I will identify it as systemic racism. It doesn't have anything to do with race whatsoever. It just comes back to this paradigm that I just demonstrated, that the narrative oftentimes contradicts the truth, but people like it better, so they'll peddle it instead of the actual truth. Here on Tall Tales, we try to stick with the truth as much as possible. Okay, back to the card, false flag versus Trump. Now, I just read you a piece from the Atlantic showing you how the image of Trump with his raised fist and the whole episode that he came down at Butler was really favorable imaging for Trump. And the day I saw it, I said, it won't take the left long to start identifying this as a false flag operation. Okay, so some of you are out there saying, false flag? What's a false flag? I'll give you a couple of examples. What a false flag is this? It's when one side pretends they're the other side and takes an action that benefits their own side. As an example, on December, September 1, 1939, German troops invaded Poland and took over half of Poland, split it with the Soviet Union. And the German troops, the German government's excuse for that was that Polish troops had invaded from Gliwice, Poland, into Germany. And Germany was just counterattacking and defending itself. Now, there had been rough diplomatic relationships between the Prime Minister of Poland and Adolf Hitler for a couple of years, even border incidents along the Polish-German frontier, which was highly contested because of the border that had been drawn after World War I. So the Germans said they were just engaging in self-defense or retaliation for what Poland had done. Now, one story of the false flag is that the Polish government rounded up a couple dozen dead Polish corpses. Dead German corpses, or maybe Polish, it doesn't matter, and dressed them in German uniforms and strewed them around the battlefield and said, see, they came over here and killed all of these Polish soldiers. The Polish are saying the Germans did the same thing. Now, we'll never know exactly which is which, and by now we really don't care. But that's an example of a false flag operation. Another example is this. When the battleship Maine, a United States battleship, anchored out in Havana Harbor, blew up and sunk, the United States said that this was the provocation for the war against Spain, that they had sunk our battleship in Cuba. Now, a lot of people came out and immediately said, no, it wasn't the Cubans that sunk it. It was the Americans that sunk it because they really wanted to go to Spain, war with Spain. They needed a good excuse. This was the false flag that they used. Now, that theory's been pretty much debunked over the years. I don't advance either of these for the truth or falsity of the story, only examples of what a false flag is. We got phone troubles again today, Daryl?
I've tried picking up 3 times, and it's off when I push the button. It turns it off.
Okay, let's try again, caller. And this is what I noticed from home. Sometimes I can get through on my landline, but I can't get through on my cell. So if you have a landline available, you might try that. Yeah, as though by magic, huh, Daryl? Let me take a peek at my stack and see what we've got here. This is Mark on Trump conspiracy. Okay, I'm just at the beginning of this story here, but we'll put you on and see what you got to say about the Trump conspiracy, Mark. Go ahead.
Hey, Bob. The reason why the red rice is orange is because they don't use the seeds from an actual.
Mark, that's not the point. I've been through this so many times. That's not the point.
Understood. I'm just saying.
Okay.
You know, with all the years doing it as a kid, I always ran around with red hands. Here's something to think about the assassination attempt on Trump. Besides the left saying that it was all planned by Trump. Okay. Trump is a presidential nominee. The area of concern where they found the yo-yo with the gun was 150 some odd yards out of the main area of concern. Snipers are posted at 4 points, so they basically have a 360-degree coverage of rooftops. Okay, Secret Service, the coverage by the Secret Service was minimal because he wasn't the president. He was a president, but he isn't a president. He's a nominee. And 2, the Secret Service relies on local jurisdictions to provide coverage. But how this yo-yo got onto a roof with a ladder carrying a gun and everyone's pointing up, but none of the law enforcement were saying anything is a mystery. The second thing was Trump didn't fall down after he got shot. He dropped. He ducked. Okay. The pictures that came out of it, I will agree with you, are going to be historic. Mainly because you're looking at a guy that just almost got plugged in the head. And he's doing something he never did during his, and I watched him. He's doing something he's never done in majority of his rallies, which is use charts and then look at the chart. He's always looking out of the crowd. If he was looking out of the crowd and the guy started shooting, he would have gotten smack dab in the head. But he was angled to the right, looking at a chart that he had on display. Now, this is just me. Okay, I expected the left to come out and say, yeah, this was planned by Trump's side to make him more sympathetic. But I mean, that can be the dumbest explanation. Even a reporter who started spewing out this, yeah, Trump planned this, or someone in Trump's camp planned this, and this is a reporter from the UK. Whereas one of the guys that sat there looked at him, because I know I dabble in the BBC every so often. He actually looked at him as, how stupid are you? And this is a journalist calling another journalist. How stupid are you to think a man is going to sit there and plan having another man shoot him in the head? Which is about the dumbest thing. But there was nothing short of, oh my Lord, the picture of the guy who got shot at, who is bleeding, telling Secret Service, let me have my shoes, standing up, and the Secret Service is trying to push him away. Now, granted, Trump is a big man, but he was defiant enough to stand there, look at
Bumper
the crowd,
music.
fist and start yelling, fight.
Gotta let you go, Mark. Thanks for chiming in.
All right.
Short break.
Stay cool all year round by checking out Johnstone Supply for your HVAC and refrigeration needs. Located at 170 Guerrero Drive on Pickendell Road in Tamuning, call Johnstone Supply today at 671-649-0581. That's 671-649-0581. Open 8 a.m. to noon and 1 to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. Open Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. and closed on Sundays. Stay cool with Johnstone Supply.
Shelley Calvo, successful entrepreneur, philanthropist, proud mother and grandmother. Shelley's broad experience spans from Silicon Valley management to chairing Guam's Homeless Coalition. As our senator, Shelley will create career opportunities for our next generation, pull people out of poverty, and will vigorously protect Guam's children from predators. Shelley is equal parts passion and compassion. If bringing values and unity to the legislature is important to you, please vote Shelley Calvo for senator.
I'm Shelley Calvo, and I approve this message.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So it was about a day after the incident in Butler that I said it won't take the left long to come out with the idea that this was a false flag operation meant to glorify Donald Trump. And I've seen probably a half dozen of these things online. I've got one in front of me. Video actress Amanda Seales pushes conspiracy theory Donald Trump assassination attempt was staged. Actress Amanda Seales took social media to advance the wild-eyed conspiracy theory that Donald Trump staged the assassination attempt on his life last weekend. Seales, probably best known for her role in the early 90s Nickelodeon series My Brother and Me, and her role in the 2016-2021 series Insecure, insisted that Trump used fake stage blood and sound effects to stage his assassination attempt. That was more staged than a Tyler Perry production of Medea Runs for President, the actor complained. Wholly ignoring the death of local fireman Corey Comparatori, whose last act was to shield his wife and his daughter as bullets pierced him. And then there's more of the same. She lived in Harlem. She knows that gunfire doesn't sound like popcorn, etc. Well, let's just take it for a moment. Let's just examine a what if. What if Donald Trump wanted to stage this? How would he go about doing it? Well, first of all, you would have a doctor make a puncture wound in your ear that's very easily sealable with something like Scotch tape. You pull, which you can't see on camera. You pull the Scotch tape out, and the blood comes out. And of course, that's, I read that Atlantic story just to kind of frame it. That blood is an important part of the picture. The bloody president got shot, saving the people, on and on and on. So that's where the blood comes from. You have a rifleman on top of the roof who doesn't even shoot at Trump. He just shoots 6 feet above Trump's head. Trump reaches up, grabs the tape, tears it off, the blood flows out. And people are saying, yeah, but what about the fireman who was killed? Ruthless people would just say, well, that was collateral damage. We needed that for realism. Now, I hate to say this. I hate to think that people could deal with such ignorant, insensitive saying. Oh, and one other example I forgot was when the Israelis sank the American destroyer during the Israeli 7 Days War. Remember that?
I do.
I can't remember the name of the destroyer. Can you? See if you can look it up quick, Daryl. Yeah, the Israelis sank an American ship in the Mediterranean, killed every single crewman on board. And they said, oh, our bad. We didn't realize it was an American ship. Well, the idea was for the Americans to come in on the side of the Israelis to avenge the sinking of the
USS Liberty.
The Liberty, that's right, yeah. If there ever anything that fit the description of a false flag operation, it was the sinking of the Liberty. So if it were, then the Israelis didn't mind killing a couple dozen Americans just to bring realism to it. So, Trump is running ahead in some of the polls. The election is far from anything but a sure thing for him. Will this picture, as so colorfully described by the Atlantic, help him? You better Hong Kong believe it'll help him, as it turns him into something close to being like a war hero without actually putting on the uniform. So, it's not totally ridiculous to start talking false flag. It's a little bit ridiculous, and it's the kind of thing that the left would dwell on after they go through the obligatory, oh, this is too bad, gosh, we've got to unite, and all kinds of words that for sure must stick in their mouths after they've done all kinds of things, calling Donald Trump Hitler, saying he's the end of our democracy, saying that he's got a ring around the collar, and every other sin known to mankind. And then they have to wonder why somebody with a screw loose goes out and takes a shot at him. Not too surprising. And you remember how they really banged Nancy Pelosi for putting a bullseye, putting a picture out with a bullseye around it. I think it was it Clinton? Or no, it was Obama. Yeah. No, it was Clinton. She put a bullseye on it, and they said, this is so irresponsible. This will cause every nutcase in the country to go out and buy a rifle and go out and try to shoot at him. But, of course, when it comes to rhetoric, there are two rules. There's the impermissible, which the right is never allowed to use, and then the impermissible, which is the foundation of the leftist propaganda. Okay, so going on next to, I've got James Moylan versus reality. Jose has a countdown of how long it's been since Jim Moylan came out and co-signed a letter written by Congressman Grijalva of Texas asking the Attorney General of the United States not to rely on the insular cases in future federal litigation. Now, when we're talking the insular cases, you have to understand Downs versus Bidwell. And if you haven't, you ought to read Downs versus Bidwell, because it's the linchpin that hold the other 10 insular cases together. And in Downs versus Bidwell, the United States Supreme Court said that the islands, the 5 islands, 4 of which were taken as prizes of war in the Spanish-American, 1 of which was ceded to the United States by the chiefs of Samoa all around the turn of the last century. And the U.S. Supreme Court says that The islands are property of the United States. They are not a part of the United States. And since they're property of the United States, they come within the ambit of Article 4, Section 3 of the United States, Paragraph 2 of the United States Constitution, which reads like this. Turning the pages here. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the property, the territory or property belonging to the United States. So if it's territory of the United States or property of the United States, Congress makes the rules. And you know, just that one phrase, territory or other property, that's enough to hang your decision on right there. Now, if you look at sequential maps of the United States from the 13 colonies on through the Florida cessions, the Louisiana Purchase, after the Louisiana Purchase, there is a huge chunk of North America that is property of the United States. It's not a territory. It's just property of the United States. Since it was property of the United States, Congress could make needful rules and regulations. Now you'll hear uninformed referring to Article 4, Section 3 as the Territories Clause. Not having that S is a big difference. It's not the Territories Clause. It's the Territory Clause. So long as the islands are organized but unincorporated territories, they are property. Ordinarily, the touchstone is the treaty by which the United States acquires the property. The Louisiana Purchase Treaty has expressed language that says that the residents of the territory of Louisiana shall be incorporated and given full rights of citizenship as soon as the United States can constitutionally do it. Hawaii, not the same thing. Alaska, the same thing. With Hawaii, it was an act of Congress. When Congress annexed Hawaii, it said the same thing, that the rights and privileges of U.S. citizens shall be afforded the residents of Hawaii as soon as the Constitution allows for it. After Hawaii and Alaska became incorporated territories, they had none of the advantages that we have, all the disadvantages of statehood. They had one non-voting delegate to Congress. They didn't elect their own governors. They paid the United States income tax. They were subject to the draft, on and on and on. They weren't free ports. So the dumbest thing we could possibly do would be to ask that Downs be overruled and that the uniformity clause of the United States Constitution apply. The uniformity clause said that Congress has the ability to lay taxes of various kinds on the states, but the taxes must be uniform. Well, they don't have to be uniform here because we're not a state. If the uniformity clause did apply, our taxes wing their way to the Treasury in D.C., and we don't have the mirror image income tax, and we don't have Section 30 money. I mean, it would be a horrible disaster. But Jim signed on to that letter to Grijalva. And he had really good company, the likes of Pocahontas, Bernie Sanders, and a bunch of other lefties. Jim, what in the hell were you doing when you signed that? And he's never come on the show to tell us why he signed it. He's been on the show before because I've always allowed him access to make reports from Washington. And he's always very anxious to tell us, well, yesterday I passed a law. I introduced a law into the House that said that every barrel that contains pork in any form shall have the word Guam on it. Yeah. Jim has done a lot in the pork barrel area, but this is an example of the old military saying that I can't use the correct vocabulary for, but it's one aw shucks wipes out 100 attaboys. So this is your one aw shucks, Jim. I don't see how you can be supported when Ginger Cruz has come out and said that we need to take advantage of our position as an unorganized territory if we're really interested in self-determination. Because if we became a territory of the United States, there is no more self-determination. It's a dead-end street. The only way out of the organized territory is statehood. There's no independence because the United States does not have the ability to dispose of a part of itself, like it did with the Philippines in 1946 when the Philippines became independent. So, Jim, I'll give you a chance. Come on the show and tell us what, if anything, you were thinking about when you created this, when you did this incredibly stupid thing. Next, we've got Maneka versus Israel. I saw a post here from, I think it was Bonnie. Can you find it, Daryl? We'll take a short break here and then we'll come back and find it.
Today, I'm Senator Jesse Anderson Lujan, and I'm running for re-election to keep improving life on Guam. We need to rebuild tourism, build a new hospital, improve public schools, reduce inflation, and fight crime. There is so much to do, and I need your support to continue this work. I humbly ask for your support and vote this election. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat po, and to Diyos Mahasal. I'm Jesse Lujan, and I approve this message.
Hi, this is Jerry Roberts. What's happening in the workplace? What about your job and career? What ideas will find their way into your world? That's what you get with the Extra Point every day on The Ray Gibson Show here on 93.3 FM. Sometimes it's about what's in the news, or working relationships, or how to get further and do better. I try to make it interesting, inspiring, and hopefully sneak a little fun in too. Be a part of it. 7:25 weekday mornings. The Extra Point. Brought to you by First Hawaiian Bank.
Yeah, I found the Bonnie Sue post. Bonnie says, I saw that Maneka was at the debate wearing her Palestinian scarf. And of course, she asked a question to the candidates concerning genocide and the Chamorro people. Now, what Maneka did not long after the October 7 invasion of Israel by the Palestinians, where they raped, murdered, killed babies, on and on and on, and confessed later on to a New York Times reporter that they had to do this because peace was breaking out in the Middle East Bonnie and some of her cohorts, about a half dozen of them, demonstrated at the legislature against a resolution that would more or less empathize and sympathize with the Israeli people. And she drew a parallel between the American administration and the Israeli administration of Palestine, of the territory of Israel. And it was just so far off and so obvious and so stupid that we've made Monica pretty much a part of the show because she continues to say stupid things like this. You know, well, we understand how the Palestinian feel because we're a colonized people. We understand genocide. We understand this kind of stuff. So much for Monica. Okay. I've already done false flag versus Trump, so let me go on. Hang on here a second. Let me go on to malfunction versus the governor. Now, you recall that malfunction introduced a bill that would require the publication of all senatorial travels, the financial details, etc. And although we get hard on malfunction sometimes, I think he was, figuratively and literally, he was right on the money this time and introduced a bill that was very well taken. It's unfortunate that it took so long to do this. You know, we had people using our money to go to FESPAC. Basically, people using our money to take a vacation and go show off. Hey, you guys, I'm a senator from Guam. I'm here at FESPAC on official travel. So this time he picked on the governor. And the story that ran in the Pacific Island Times, frequent flyers, governor, lieutenant governor under fire for traveling too much. And a quote for Barnett, I lost track of how many times we've had an acting or acting governor or lieutenant governor. And here's how it sounds. Chris Barnett has sent a FOIA to the Department of Administration asking for travel documents for the governor and lieutenant governor and any and all accompanied travelers, regardless of agency funding the travel. Grant? Yeah, okay. I got to stop here. We'll break for our halftime show and be back in 6 or 7 minutes.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Haley makes one thing perfectly clear. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News.
Donald Trump has my strong endorsement, period.
Former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, who campaigned long and hard against former President Trump, gave him her endorsement last night at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. Former rivals Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy also took to the stage.
Let's heed the call of our party's nominee to fight for these United States.
We're not going to win this election just by criticizing the other side. We're going to win this by standing for our own vision of who we really are.
A bandaged but upbeat former President Trump sat in the audience, flanked by family and loyal supporters. He'll speak Thursday night. Earlier near the convention, Ohio police shot and killed a man wielding 2 knives after they say that he refused to drop them. Officers from Columbus, Ohio are among the extra police brought in to help keep the convention safe. President Biden addressed the NAACP convention in Las Vegas last night, reminding the audience that he, not former President Trump, created black jobs. including a very high-profile one. And that is the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. And during the speech, he announced a proposal to require corporate landlords to cap rent increases by 5% or risk losing their tax benefits. A murder mystery in Thailand. Police in Bangkok say they found 6 people dead in the Grand Hyatt Erawan Hotel yesterday. Traces of cyanide in all their cups.
The victims, who were guests at the hotel, were all Vietnamese. Thailand's foreign ministry says 2 also had United States citizenship.
Fox's Jonathan Savage. America's listening to Fox News.
Wow, Bank Pacific, 70 years.
That's right.
Are you celebrating?
You bet. For starters, we opened in 1954, so we're offering a very special personal loan with rates as low as 5.4% APR.
5.4?
And you can borrow up to $50,000 for whatever. Summer travel, back to school, paid on credit cards.
Can I apply online?
Yes. And in any of our convenient offices. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots for 70 years.
Equal opportunity lender. Conditions apply.
Have a day and mabuhay. I'm Mary Ann Suya Lujan, Vice Mayor of Guimbal, Iloilo, Philippines. My husband, Senator Jesse Lujan, is running for re-election as your senator. Senator Jesse fights to reduce inflation, improve healthcare and education, rebuild tourism, and combat crimes. Please vote for Senator Jesse Lujan. Si Jules Maase, thank you very much.
I'm Jesse Lujan, and I approve this message.
A federal jury convicts Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey on all counts in his bribery and corruption trial.
Obviously, I'm deeply, deeply disappointed by the jury's decision. I have every faith that the law and the facts did not sustain that decision and that we will be successful upon appeal.
An iconic Las Vegas casino closes its doors today.
The last hand has been dealt at the Mirage Hotel and Casino. More than 3 decades since it opened in 1989, the Las Vegas Strip staple has been known for its man-made volcano, as well as its shows like the Beatles-themed Cirque du Soleil performances. The Mirage was also home to the duo who became famous for their extravagant shows in the 90s with White Lions and Tigers.
Be a part of history the next time that Siegfried and Roy set foot on the stage at the Mirage.
The resort, which is owned and operated by Hard Rock International, will reopen in 2027 as Hard Rock Las Vegas. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
Now that Senator J.D. Vance is former President Trump's running mate, the film version of his book is getting renewed attention.
Audiences are revisiting the film adaptation of J.D. Vance's memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, after Vance was named as former President Donald Trump's running mate in the upcoming election. According to Luminate, viewership on Netflix grew to 9.5 million viewers Monday. Compare that to the 750,000 that tuned into the movie on Sunday.
You got a right to your own life. Don't make us your excuse, J.D.
Hillbilly Elegy was based on the book written by Vance, and it told of the decline of the white working class. And when it was published in the summer of 2016, it was held up by conservatives and liberals as shedding light on the legacy of abuse, alcoholism, and poverty. Michelle Polino, Fox News.
And I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Each year at Liberation, we honor Guam's greatest generation. Their sacrifice laid the foundation for the growth that carried our island through the 20th century. Today, we are called to rise to the challenges of a new century. I'm running for Congress to advance our economy, strengthen our infrastructure, and improve public safety, education, and health care. I humbly ask for your vote this election.
Paid for by Shelton for Congress, Johnny Cole Torres, Treasurer.
Half a day. Kim Anderson from Security Title here to share some behind-the-scenes functions of a title company. First, we search the chain of title to property, and when a critical link is missing, we work with the owners to correct their ownership. When it comes to a sale, we work closely with realtors and lenders to ensure a smooth closing. Finally, we back up our work with a title insurance policy that guarantees the buyer they actually own the property. Security Title has the management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Hi, this is Jerry Roberts. What's happening in the workplace? What about your job and career? What ideas will find their way into your world? That's what you get with The Extra Point every day on The Ray Gibson Show here on 93.3 FM. Sometimes it's about what's in the news, or working relationships, or how to get further and do better. I try to make it interesting, inspiring, and hopefully sneak a little fun in too. Be a part of it. 7:25 weekday mornings. The Extra Point, brought to you by First Hawaiian Bank.
So that was the Tall Tales Rogues Gallery. Which I think we're all familiar with. And Daryl can tell you how you too can get your face on the Rogues Gallery.
I don't have that script ready, but I do know that if you go to the site, one of our sites, and you find where there's a picture of Jose with his beard.
Let me pick it up.
You do it, please.
Yeah, go to thepoint.gu. That's the Point's official website. Look for the picture of the beard. You'll find a link right next to the beard. You can buy your T-shirt there. The T-shirt will come to you in the mail. Put it on, take a selfie, and send it to the Point's WhatsApp number, which is, you don't know.
You know, I have this script somewhere.
Good. Okay, well, at the next break, you can tell people what the Point's WhatsApp number is, okay? All right, so picking up where we left off with Chris Barnett sending a FOIA to DOA asking for travel documents for the governor, lieutenant governor, and accompanying travelers. Granting access to pertinent information about how GovGuam leaders are spending people's money empowers them, especially given the recent increase in government travel involving the governor and lieutenant governor. Their travel has resulted in noticeable absences from their positions, said the chairman of the Committee on Rules. Last month, the governor flew to Hawaii where she attended the Festival of Pacific Arts. On July 3, she went to Saipan to meet with Governor Arnold Palacios. In May, she went to Palau, where she joined Colonel Michael Cruz, Adjutant General of the Guam National Guard. Maybe it's General Michael Cruz, the Adjutant General, to sign a declaration formalizing the nation's newest state partnership between Guam and Palau. In December, the governor took a trip to D.C. where she met Kurt Campbell, National Security Council Coordinator. She went to Honolulu in October for the Pacific Defense Contracting Summit. Barnett said, "I've lost track of how many times we've had an acting governor or acting lieutenant governor. But I do know is our people reserve accountability and transparency from all branches of the government that serve them. Calling for anything less looks like a political attack," Barnett said. Lieutenant Governor Josh this month traveled to D.C. to participate in a wreath-laying ceremony at the Guam Pillar of the World War II Memorial and commemorate the 80th anniversary of the liberation. The FOIA request to Administration Director Ed Byrne, and they finally got it right. He's not the Director of Administration. I'm not the Director of Department of Administration. He's the Director of Administration. While seeking travel reports from the administration, the legislature has disclosed all travel authorizations and expenditure reports for each senatorial office on its website. The People's House has always prioritized transparency in the government. To uphold this commitment, I have made public travel all authorizations and expenditure reports for every senatorial office. These documents were already available to anyone who asked for them. Calls for heightened transparency and accountability in government-funded travel activities raises valid concerns for all branches, including autonomous agencies. Malfunction added. I think this information will show why it's important not to single out any branch over the other when it comes to transparency. I think this information will also give people a little context for comparison. If we want to talk about travel, let's put all the cards on the table. It's also my intention to amend any bill that addresses travel transparency, either in committee or on the floor. Okay, well, once again, good call, Malfunction. I've been on you sometimes, but you're right this time. And let's just take a look at some of the money that your money was spent on. She went to Saipan on July 3 to meet with Governor Arnold Palacios. Why would she want to meet with Governor Arnold Palacios on my nickel? Two separate jurisdictions, two separate islands. You could call him up, you could send him an email, you could WhatsApp him, you could Skype him. To spend all that money on plane fare, and we don't know how long she stayed, what the hotel bill was, etc. To Palau with Michael Cruz to sign a declaration. Once again, really nice grandstanding. I'm sure it's a lot of fun, a lot of shake and howdy, a lot of backslapping, a lot of smoke blowing, etc. How does it help you and me that she went to Palau with the Adjutant General? She went to Washington to meet with Kurt Campbell, National Security Council Coordinator. Maybe that's okay.
Yeah, that's White House meeting.
Yeah, that might be okay because we are out here at the forward edge of the battle area, something that we should continually remind the defense and security establishments of so we can continue to work our message that a prosperous Guam is good for the defense of the United States. She went to Honolulu for a Pacific Defense Contracting Summit. That sounds like something a staffer might want to go to. Tenorio went to D.C. for a wreath-laying ceremony. Classic junket. Wreath-laying ceremonies and the 80th anniversary of liberation.
That's what Jim is for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we don't need to spend thousands of dollars on ceremonies. Okay, now here's a tip for those who would do Freedom of Information Act requests, also known as sunshine requests. If your request is too broad, you're giving the administration the opportunity to do a document dump. And of course, they'll tell you that in order to comply with this request, they got to deal with all 54 agencies of the government of Guam. Letter out, any of your employees travel? If so, send us the documentation, etc. Now, if they get a lot of the documentation, they will give you that documentation, the stuff you want about the governor. It'll just stack of papers, not in any particular order, not to make any sense, something you can spend 3 or 4 hours sorting out to make any sense of. If you want to do that kind of request, here's how you do it. You do several requests, narrow in scope, so that each request is dealt with on its own bottom. So if you want to know about the governor, send one to the governor. You want to know about the lieutenant governor, send one to the light governor. You want to know about the Department of Military Affairs, send one to the Department of Military Affairs. That way they all have to come back responsive to the request. That goes for anybody out in the media. I don't think the media knows anything about the Sunshine Law, Jose.
It doesn't appear that they know how to ask questions.
It ought to be their most valuable tool. And I seldom see them using it. I made a mistake. I probably pissed off both of you by calling you Jose.
No, I'm fine.
You don't know about Jose.
I do know about Jose.
Yeah, you don't know. It may have angered him dramatically.
Oh.
Just because it didn't bother you doesn't mean it didn't bother him.
We'll ask him, but I doubt it.
The right answer to that is, when I say you might have angered Jose too, your right answer is, yeah, maybe you're right, Bob.
Okay, maybe you're right, Bob.
There you go. Okay, next item on the card is Robert Underwood versus Robert Underwood. And this is a report on a resolution asking the Secretary of the Department of Defense to share critical information on the proposed 360-degree missile defense system for Guam by a top research and development center, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Lincoln Lab, drew support during a public hearing Monday. Speaker Tetlahi's Resolution 433 requests access to the unclassified version of the independent assessment of the integrated air and missile defense architecture to defend Guam, which was authorized by U.S. Public Law 117-263 and commissioned by DOD in 2023. The information is needed, said Tetlahi, ahead of the deadline for the public comment on 378-page environmental assessment, which was extended by the military from July 2 to August 2 at the request of local officials. There are specific concerns about missile testing from Anderson and the impact on surrounding owners. Former Delegate Robert Underwood, chairman of the local military watchdog, the Pacific Center for Island Security, testified during Monday's hearing. Quote, the idea that you could write a letter and tell a landowner that we're going to do missile testing and you might have to leave your property for a few days, it would be unthinkable that that would be attempted anywhere. But it seems like it's okay here. The plan calls for up to 2 flight tests or tracking exercises per year from Anderson or at sea from a U.S. Navy ship underway in the broad ocean area of the Westpac for a period of 10 years beginning first quarter fiscal 2025. Congress directed that the elements of the independent assessment include the proposed architecture capability to address non-ballistic and ballistic missile threats to Guam, including the sensor, command, and control, and the interceptor systems being proposed, the development and integration risk of the proposed architecture, the manning and required to operate the proposed architecture, including availability of housing and infrastructure on Guam to support the needed manning levels. The MIT Lincoln Lab was selected for the assessment as a top U.S. Department of Defense Research and Development Center chartered to apply advanced technology problems of national security. Underwood said local leaders and community should have access to all of that information. We need to be treated with at least the respect and transparency about our risk. What has been thrust upon the community has never been done before. PCIS board member Leland Bettis testified on the other COP concern, the impact of military buildup on local housing. Bettis said the DoD is keenly aware of the looming housing crisis, as the most recent National Defense Authorization Act requires the Defense Secretary to report to Congress on it by the end of the year. As further evidence that military knows there's a problem, the NDAA makes all DoD civilians on Guam eligible for off-base housing allowance. So the problem just keeps multiplying even as they recognize their problem. Bettis also said while the military is well aware of the issues, it's just not adequately planned for. Instead, its solution is what he described as a pump and dump, which means to pump the military housing requirements into Guam and dump the housing problem outside the fence. He cited previously reported statistics that indicate that based on the military's own budget, 20 years after planning to move Marines to Guam, there's still going to be 1,750 units short by 2019. Bettis asserts that the problem could even get worse. Over the longer horizon, an increasing number of military units are being planned for Guam, as Joint Region Marianas has estimated the military population in Guam will increase more than 40% in the next 13 years. Okay, and Underwood and Bettis published this. The third member of their group, which is called, I can really remember, the Pacific Center for Island Security. The third member is a guy named Gary Cooper, whose watch is broken no matter what time it is. He looks at his watch and it says it's noon. Why would that be, Daryl?
Because it's not working, and it's right twice a day.
High noon, Gary.
High noon, Gary Cooper.
Gary Cooper, high noon, yeah. Okay, you know why I'm so sharp, Daryl? Because I was raised on the edge of town. There you go. Okay, now this is good work. And the paper that Underwood and Bettis put out is good work. I really like it because I just don't have time to go through all of these papers, scrape together all of this information, and lay it out in a reasonable fashion like these guys have. But Robert, you know, one rotten apple tends to spoil the whole barrel. And that's what you do, and I think you do it every time you write something. You've got to get into the grievance politics. As an example, you say, we need to be treated with at least the respect of transparency about our risk. What has been thrust upon our community has never been done before. You're right in there with that rhetoric, the oppressor and the oppressed. We see that all the time. It doesn't come from you. And when I see it, and there's an even worse one at the beginning of this article. Yeah. The idea that you could write a letter and tell a landowner that we're going to do missile testing and you might have to leave your property for a few days, it would be unthinkable that that would be attempted anywhere. But it seems like it's okay, Underwood said. It's okay here. Poor people of Guam, poor victims, this nasty oppressor. Why not just lay it out? And I haven't seen anything that talks about a couple of days. And I haven't seen anything that says it might be anything but voluntary, just like that area up in the near on the north.
Uruno.
No, up in the northeast part of the island where they think there might be unexploded ordnance. You see notice published in the paper that EOT teams are going to be coming out there.
Right.
If you have a suspicion, you know, you might want to tell them. If you wanted to leave the property, that might be okay. But I don't know that anybody, you know, you might want to show us a letter or quote the letter. It just seems like it's more of this grievance politics, like unless you're really angry about something, you have nothing to say. And that the United States is the great oppressor and the poor people of Guam are the oppressed. When you do this, whatever credibility you had is gone, Robert, and you're doing a valuable service. Why not just stick with it and leave the grievance procedure to somebody else, the grievance politics? If people want to read this and write snotty letters to the editor, that's one thing. But for you to do it when you're holding yourself out as this responsible committee, doesn't work very well. And as we say in Chamorro, the English, the Chamorro way, doesn't worth it. Okay, let's head for Wrigley Field, Daryl.
There are so many issues that I see happening for Guam, and I have so many ideas for how we might try a different path. I love my island, and I want to serve you. So read my plan at gingercruise.com, and I humbly ask for your vote. I'm Ginger Cruz, and I approve this ad.
Stay cool all year round by checking out Johnstone Supply for your HVAC and refrigeration needs. Located at 170 Guerrero Drive on Picanel Road in Tamuning, call Johnstone Supply today at 671-649-0581. That's 671-649-0581. Open 8 a.m. to noon and 1 to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. Open Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. and closed on Sundays. Stay cool with Johnstone Supply.
So here we are, Wrigley Field in Chicago, world's most beautiful ballpark. Look out there in the center field bleachers. Everybody is standing up, taking the 7th inning stretch. For tailgaters, it means we've got 2 more innings. We can retire to the clubhouse, take a shower, and call it a game. Next on my card, I've got Paul Poms versus Doug. P-O-M-E-S. I would pronounce it Palms if I were in Aussie. Because in Australia, a Pom, P-O-M, is someone from England, from the United Kingdom at least. And in Aussie, they call them pommies. I don't know the exact derivation of the term pom. I'm told that comedians in Australia will tell you that POM, P-O-M, is an acronym that stands for Prisoner of Mother England. You know that the Brits use Aussie as a penal colony where they shipped all of their prisoners for a long time. This perhaps is the explanation of why Aussies tend to be so much more rebellious, what's the word I'm looking for, rambunctious and irreverent than their southern neighbors, the Kiwis, who hold the Brits in high esteem. So if they were pronounced the Aussie way, it would be Palms. Fino tomorrow, Palmis, eh? So I'm just going to stick with Palms. So he has to pile on Doug Moylan and say just about the same thing that the social workers said in their press release. He starts out by saying, I'm writing in support of the recent letter from the National Association of Social Justice Warriors criticizing A.G. Moylan's billboards. These billboards promote racism, division, and in the case of the bitter, a meth addict and a loved one, vigilante justice. The members of NASW have to deal with many of the people that crime affects on this island, perps, victims, and their respective families. They seek to identify and address many of the causes behind criminal behavior. One cause that's immediately apparent is a scourge of methamphetamine. A.G. Moylan would better use taxpayer dollars by prosecuting its importers rather than its low-level users. Well, you're a social worker, so now you can tell Doug Moylan who he should prosecute. Now let's just take that apart. How many people does the Attorney General go out and arrest during a year? The Attorney General or his deputies and assistants. Maybe a dozen in a whole year. Is he a deputy, as you were, someone deputized by the Attorney General can make an arrest. But almost all of the arrests are made by law enforcement, primarily the police department. If a fish and wildlife officer catches you poaching and you've got methamphetamine in your pocket, he'll also arrest you for meth. Even if he decides he doesn't have enough evidence to invest you for poaching, he'll arrest you for arrest. The airport police, even corrections officers have the power of arrest. So criminal cases start out with law enforcement doing an arrest. Law enforcement drafts up a standard form. They all use the same form, and they send that form to the Attorney General. A deputy or assistant Attorney General will look at that form, decide whether or not, no, I'm assuming no arrest here. I'll come back to that. No arrest looks at that form and decides, is there enough here for arrest or an indictment, and proceeds to the indictment. If it's a warrantless arrest, which 99% of felony arrests are, that same report comes up a police report comes up, an assistant or deputy attorney general looks at it, asks, is there enough evidence here to take this matter to a magistrate, because the arrestee has a right to appear before a magistrate within 48 hours to contest his arrest, since it was a warrantless arrest. If the papers the Attorney General files show that it was a good arrest, in other words, there was probable cause for the arrest, the next thing that is done is the conditions of release are arranged. No bail, high bail, cash bail, signature bail, release on recognizance, etc. It's only after that that the Attorney General gets to decide whether he's going to prosecute or not. The Attorney General has tremendous discretion to decide who he's going to prosecute and who he's not going to prosecute. If the person that killed Donald Trump were here on island and confessed, and the Attorney General decided he didn't want to prosecute, no one can make him. Well, that's an extreme example, but that's starting out at the bottom of the slippery slope. Things like that don't happen. We have an elected Attorney General who is, of course, sensitive to the demands of the community. But to say Moylan would make better use of taxpayer dollars by prosecuting its importers rather than low-level dealers, the only way that Doug could do that would be to say, I'm not going to prosecute low-level dealers. Who does that hurt? Who does it help? You know, that's franchising the whole business. So it's just stupid. But what can you expect from a go out and do some social work, Mr. Palms, instead of second-guessing the Attorney General. Moylan's response shows a lack of concern for how these billboards affect local attitudes. Well, he does show concern. When the word shame come up, he says that's the point, that people should be ashamed that they are involved with dealing this poison to the people of Guam. And when you're convicted, which you have to be to get your picture on the billboard, there's no doubt about it. You've been dealing poison to the people of Guam. A person should be ashamed to get involved with that, regardless of how much money's involved. And his friends, acquaintances, and relatives should tell him that. Don't get involved with that. I'd be ashamed to say that you're my friend if you get busted for peddling meth. You want to borrow $20? Here it is. So Moylan doesn't show a lack of concern. Nowhere in the NASW release is there criticism of law enforcement. Despite A.G. Moylan's claim otherwise, A.G. Moylan is part of law enforcement. He and his deputies. Nor does he justify with any evidence that their comments, in fact, cost all of us millions of dollars in taxpayer money. How much evidence went into the National Association of Social Workers letter? None. It was pure opinion, their feelings more than anything else. As a veterinarian on Guam, I treat clients and patients alike and refuse to assume that someone from off-island is more likely to cheat me than someone born here. Well, of course, just like the other social workers, if he is one, he's got to use this opportunity to do some virtue signaling and righteousness training and condemn anyone who doesn't. Unlike Moylan, most people on Guam support the efforts of NASW to promote the well-being of all. And you knew that how, Mr. Pons. So quit piling on. Let's encourage the Attorney General to bust as much meth as he can, to do what he can to discourage meth pushers. And let's see, I've got Frenchie on the letter to Doug. Go ahead, Frenchie.
Yeah, hi, Bob. Good afternoon. Yeah, I read that letter to the editor, and I had a similar reaction than yours. The first thing I thought, I said, oh, we have a new Neil Weir on our hands, trying to be the white savior. And, of course, wanting to replace cops and attorney generals by social workers. This is ridiculous. The man is living in Talafofo, where a lot of the drug dealing is happening. Maybe if he needs to get involved in helping the police find the real drug dealers, since he's so worried about it. But of course, he doesn't have the cojones to do that. So it was very frustrating to read that thing, and we read a lot of those. Actually, the opposing page was something similar on a different subject, but that's the treatment we get lately in the local press. So it's another Neil Weir in the making, except this one should worry about animals rather than being a lawyer. So we'll see. Oh, and you mentioned many times free press. Guam politicians should make sure we get free press when they get to the mainland and everything. And I've been watching the convention the last 2 days, and I think it's by accident, but Guam is right dead left of the main stage, and so every time a guest speaker arrives to address the convention, we see Guam there, right next to Puerto Rico and Indiana.
Oh, that's good. We need all the publicity
Guam,
we can get.
Yeah, we every day of the convention we have seen Guam dead center on the stage, so that was interesting. And then we saw some of the delegations that seems to be quite happy being there. So, and of course, Tony Ada never see a camera he doesn't like to be right in front of. So
He may be choosing his next candidate for governor to run with. Maybe that's why he's there. He's run for lieutenant governor the last two times. Maybe he's looking for a running mate.
Yeah. Most likely. So it was interesting. And then there was a gentleman also that intervened. I guess he's running for senator in the Commonwealth of Virginia. His name is Cao, I think. And he's a Vietnamese American. And he stopped by the Guam delegation because that is the first U.S. soil that he touched as a refugee, was being on Guam for several weeks. So that was an interesting story. And a former Navy SEAL, retired as a Navy captain.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, I'm glad you mentioned that article, that letter, because it's so much malarkey in a few phrases. It's
Thank you, Frenchie.
Wrong reason to try to give us more, make us feel like this is racism. He claims this is racism. What does he bring for that? Nothing. So another white savior for people that didn't ask to be saved.
Thank you, Frenchie. Okay, we got to go to Churchill Downs now.
It's been my privilege to serve as your senator since 2019 to advance an agenda built on the needs and aspirations of the people of Guam. Together, we've secured funding for critical programs, strengthened existing laws, and championed new legislation. I'll put my lawmaking experience and know-how to work. I'm ready to do the heavy lifting for our island in Congress. I'm Amanda Shelton, and I humbly ask for your vote.
Paid for by Shelton for Congress, Johnny Cold Taurus Treasure.
Wow, Bank Pacific, 70 years.
That's right.
Are you celebrating?
You bet. For starters, we opened in 1954, so we're offering a very special personal loan with rates as low as 5.4% APR.
5.4?
And you can borrow up to $50,000 for whatever. Summer travel, back to school, paid on credit cards.
Can I apply online?
Yes. And in any of our convenient offices. Bank Pacific. For Elizabeth branches, we place roots for 70 years.
Equal opportunity lender. Conditions apply.
So here we are, Churchill Downs in Louisville, 6 furlongs. I cross the finish line and conclude another exciting, elucidating, educational episode of Tall Tales. Aren't you glad you joined us today? I'm going to engage in a little self-laudatory backslapping here. If I could have your permission to be a little self-laudatory for the, as though I ever needed anyone's permission to be self-laudatory. When I was a senator back in the 27th and 28th legislature, I had a website, and I posted the data of every single penny of your money that I spent as a senator, every cent, so you knew exactly how every penny was spent. You want to know how much I spent on official travel? None. I went to the Republican National Convention, which that year was held in Madison Square Garden, New York, cast one of Guam's 6 votes for George Bush, but I paid my own way, bought my own ticket, brought my own, didn't bring my staff along, brought my wife along, and paid her way. I didn't take any official travel, understanding that all of the problems that I had to solve dealt with what we were doing right here in Guam. I did make extensive use of the internet, email, correspondence, etc., but I didn't spend a nickel of your money on travel and transportation for myself or my staff. If I could do it, why can't the rest of these guys? Why can't they put that same stuff up on a website? And the reason, of course, is they know that taking junkets on public money doesn't sit well with the electorate. Best to keep it on the down low as much as you can. Something else I wanted to mention was, oh, shucks. Yeah, it'll come back to me. Did you find that number, Daryl?
No, I don't have it with me. It's in another book.
It's on the website.
It's on the website?
Yeah.
I shouldn't touch too many buttons in here or something could get kablooey.
Look it up on your phone.
Ah.
Okay, last item on the card is Dave Sablon versus Fisher. This is a 2.5-page letter that I probably won't be able to finish before the end of the show, but I will entertain phone calls between now and the time we say goodbye to our president. But, you know, Fisher needs to hear as much of this as I can put out on the air. And it goes like this. It's testimony against Bill 318. Dear Chairman St. Augustine and members of the committee, my name is David Sablon. I'm a resident of Santa Rita. I'm also president of the Concerned Catholics of Guam, a nonprofit. I reviewed Bill 318, which, if passed and signed into law by the governor, will appropriate $400,000 from the general fund to the Bureau of Women's Affairs to fund a program called the Guam Doula Project. I hereby submit testimony against that bill. $400,000 is a lot of money to any part of the government, especially to the Bureau of Women's Affairs, if you've been following it since the governor reactivated it at the beginning of her administration. It had died from desuetude under subsequent governors. The governor reactivated it, put Calamity Jane Flores in charge of it, and has been nothing but the pro-abortion office for the governor since then. Calamity was in contact with two abortionists from Hawaii, Kaneshiro and Radu, coaxed them into coming out to Guam, getting admitted to practice so they could be co-defendants in a lawsuit filed in federal court, so they'd have standing to procure an injunction against part of our anti-abortion legislation. That's the Bureau of Women's Affairs. Now, of course, anybody who can add and subtract and knows anything about demographics knows that more than half of the children carried in the bellies of pregnant women are themselves women. But Jane does not that interested in that. It's more, I'm going to draw a really rude parallel here. You know, it's more like we cherish the newfound right of women to bodily autonomy over the life of a helpless, innocent, defenseless human. The Aztecs and other pre-Western civilization contact used to sacrifice babies as a means of practicing their religion, sacrificing babies. Couldn't we make the argument that we do the same thing here? Because a woman has a right to control her own body, even when what she's controlling is not her own body, but a separate human being. So, in order to celebrate that quasi-religion, what we have to do is sacrifice babies. And the babies that we're sacrificing are those helpless, innocent, defenseless humans in the body of a pregnant woman. You don't need to be Catholic to buy into this. Your basic sense of empathy and morality ought to take you to that destination. You know, as a general proposition, one human doesn't want to see another human without sufficient cause. And I have some doubts about that. I am absolutely against capital punishment. I don't see empowering the state to take the life of anyone. And if that's true as far as a convicted murderer is concerned, it's true in spades with a helpless, innocent, defenseless baby. Thomas Fisher takes the opposite view. He's probably the most prominent pro-abortionist in the legislature. And when Thomas Fisher appropriates money to Calamity Jane, my initial reaction is no good can come from this. Dave goes on to say the bill cites statistics on maternal mortality rate from the Human Resources and Services Administration of the U.S. A maternal mortality as defined by the Center and the World Health Organization is the death of a woman while pregnant or within 42 days of the end of pregnancy from any cause related to or aggravated by the pregnancy or its management, but not from accidental or incidental causes. Maternal mortality rates are calculated by the NCHS as the number of maternal deaths per 100,000 live births. March 2023 report from Donna Hoyard of the Division of Vital Stats, National Center of Health Statistics, presented to the Secretary's Advisory Committee on Infant Mortality. Section 1 of Fisher's bill cites certain numbers as the island's maternal mortality rate 10-year average from the most recent 10-year is still higher than the one from the CDC. Is the 29.4 island, why not instead of, maternal deaths an average for 10 years from 2018 or 2017, the total number of maternal deaths, so the reference period, further is 29.4 based on 100,000 live births. So Dave's quibbling with Fisher's statistics a little bit. Okay, leaving the statistics and plunging into the heart of Dave's letter. Dave said, I never heard the word doula before, so I looked up the meaning of the word from several sources. I never heard the word either. Tungo na e palabra doula. Hafa na klase, hafa ko meki elek niya doula gifinu English. Ufaisen guaho na maisa. I found how this doula project equates to a pathway to abortion. The definition in Wikipedia is a non-medical professional who provides guidance for the service of others and who supports another person through a significant health-related experience such as childbirth, miscarriage, induced abortion, or stillbirth, as well as non-productive experiences such as dying. So there you got it from Wikipedia. Doulas are not midwives. Midwives are healthcare professionals. So why not allocate funds to the Guam Community College or UOG to fund a midwife training program along with our excellent nursing program? This makes more sense than funding a doula program through the Bureau of Women's Affairs. Anything makes more sense than funding a program through the Bureau of Women's Affairs, I'd say. In light of all these questions and misleading statistics with no data details to justify the appropriation of $400,000, this doula project is irrelevant and probably unnecessary. This bill is not intended to provide health care to pregnant women and the development in their wombs from conception to birth. In an article in the Post dated June 28, a doula named Kristen Rosario stated that there are 13 doulas on the island, from abortion doulas to postpartum and childbirth doulas. That's the end. I've got to say goodbye to our president. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Unity on stage. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. The Republican National Convention paraded a long list of prominent politicians on stage during the convention's second night in a